The clock's tick amplified the silence. Abraham Lincoln dragged the quill hard across the parchment. The sound was a harsh scrape against the paper. "My dear General, I do not believe you appreciate the immensity of what has just occurred," he writes, the ink bleeding slightly from the pressure. He pauses, staring at the ceiling. The chance to end this war now, and he hesitated. He dips the quill, his hand visibly tightening around the wood. "You had the enemy within your grasp. You had him exactly where we have prayed for him to be since the start of this conflict." He pushes the candle closer. The heat does not register. "You paused. You stopped the pursuit. You allowed him to cross the river unmolested." Lincoln slams the quill down. It bounces twice on the table before resting near the inkwell. He shoves a stack of telegraph reports across the table. They detail General Robert E. Lee's successful retreat across the Potomac River. The lives saved, the suffering ended. Meade has prolonged the carnage. He retrieves the quill, gripping it tightly. He writes rapidly, the words tumbling onto the page, losing their formal structure. "I am writing this not as a statement of official policy, but as the outpouring of a heart that is utterly crushed." He reads the line back, moving his lips. He underlines the word crushed with heavy ink. "We had them. We had the war's conclusion in the palm of our hand, and you permitted the escape." He continues the charge, his sentences short and pointed. "I must tell you that I am more grieved and angered by this failure than by anything that has happened since the start of the war. You allowed the greatest prize to slip away. You had the power to stop the conflict, and you did not use it." He writes the final line, underlining the command heavily. The point of the quill breaks, leaving a small black spider mark on the paper. "You will be asked to explain this delay. The future of this republic demands that explanation." He throws the now broken quill onto the floor. He stares at the letter, its ink still glistening, unforgiving. The clock's ticking was the only constant sound. Abraham Lincoln paced the length of the office carpet. "He is gone, John, across the river. Safe," Lincoln states, the words clipped. John Hay, his secretary, stands by the desk. "The final reports confirm it, Mr. President. The enemy crossed the Potomac. The rain and the swollen waters provided the necessary cover." Lincoln stops pacing. The rain provided nothing. Meade provided the time. Time is the only thing the enemy required to achieve his escape. Hay addresses the situation cautiously. The general cited logistical difficulties in pursuit. His troops were severely depleted from 3 days of fighting. Depleted? Lee's entire army was demoralized, crippled, Lincoln counters. They had one desperate escape route. "We had 90,000 men within striking distance. He secured the field, sir. The victory at Gettysburg was still profound," Hay insists. "It saved Pennsylvania. It drove the invasion out." Lincoln throws his arm out, dismissing the claim. "Securing the field means nothing if the enemy army walks away whole. It was not a victory, John. It was a reprieve. A victory is the end of the conflict. This is merely the postponement of the next battle." Lincoln retrieves the unsent letter from the desk. He holds the paper between two fingers. "I wrote this. I wrote what I truly felt about his lack of initiative." Hay looks at the letter but does not move to take it. If he had pursued too rashly and failed, the consequences would have been catastrophic for the Union. If he had pursued and won, the consequences would have been peace, Lincoln says, his voice low. "Which consequence do you prefer, John?" He throws the letter back onto the desk. "Do you know the cost of the next battle, John? It is being paid now by men who should be home. We paid the price for the victory, and now we must pay the price for the missed opportunity." Hay tries to soften the assessment. Meade won the battle. Lee's casualties were immense. The Army of Northern Virginia is severely weakened. Weakened, yes, but still capable of fighting another year. Another 2 years, Lincoln declares. "Every soldier who dies from this day forward, I must charge against the inaction of that one critical moment." Hay knows Lincoln charges everything against himself first. The general is popular with his men. The public sees him as the hero of the East. A direct condemnation would be justified. "I gave him the full command. I told him he had the discretion to act boldly," Lincoln interrupts. "He chose discretion over decision." He walks to the map of Virginia on the wall. "Look at this river. Lee crossed it in full view, gathering his forces, strengthening his defenses, and Meade watched. He feared a counterattack if he crossed immediately into their prepared positions, Hay argues. Fear is not leadership, John. Calculation is, Lincoln states, turning from the map, and his calculation was fatal to my hope, and fatal to thousands of men who will fall in the Shenandoah Valley next spring. He faces Hay, his exhaustion evident. I will think of all the fathers and sons who remain on the list of the living, only to be moved to the list of the dead in future campaigns. I will not sleep tonight. Hay asks directly, Sir, what action do you take regarding General Meade, a new commander? Lincoln looks down at the letter. I must choose, send this letter or destroy the anger that wrote it. Abraham Lincoln stands by the window looking out into the pre-dawn sky. The unsent letter to General Meade lies flat on his desk. He speaks softly, almost to himself. A military commander fails. The consequences are measured in bodies. A president fails. The consequences are measured in the death of the Republic. John Hay waits silently for him to continue. Lincoln turns away from the window. He walks back toward the desk, stopping short of touching the letter. I have the right to send this. I have the authority to destroy his career with these words. He says aloud, that paper holds my immediate, furious judgment. It is entirely correct in its assessment of the failure. Meade had the chance. He let it go. Hay asks directly, then why hesitate, sir? You demanded boldness. He delivered caution. If he remains in command, he might make the same error when the next opportunity arises. Lincoln picks up the letter, holding it without reading it. The error is not only his, John, the error is the burden of command. I placed him there. I demanded perfection when I know perfection is not possible. He walks to the fireplace, tapping the letter against the mantelpiece. If I send this, I satisfy my own rage. That is all it accomplishes. It does not bring back the dead who will fall next year. It does not instantly breed a new perfect general. A president's words can destroy more than armies. My language is a weapon that must be used against the enemy, never against my own general. He looks at Hay. Do you understand the difference between the power of destruction and the power of construction? This letter destroys the man. It constructs nothing. Hay replies, but it clarifies expectations, sir. It shows the army and the public that failure in the pursuit of victory is unacceptable. It shows them that the president is driven by vengeance, not strategy, Lincoln insists. Meade is already consumed by his decision. He did not let Lee escape out of malice. He acted out of excessive caution and fatigue. He places the letter back on the desk. I have demanded immense sacrifice from these men. I cannot, in turn, demand the impossible. If I break him now, who will take his place? Another general, instantly fearful of every telegraph from the White House. You need a general who is not afraid of failure, sir, Hayes suggests. I need a general who is not afraid of me, John, Lincoln counters sharply. If I establish myself as the ultimate unforgiving judge of every military hesitation, I freeze all initiative. The next commander will spend his time calculating my moods, not calculating the enemy's positions. He walks behind his desk, leaning heavily on the back of his chair. The greatest power I possess is not the pen that signs the orders. It is the pen that refuses to write the angry words. I must save my authority for the great decisions. This is merely temper. Hay nods slowly. So the letter remains unsent, to protect the chain of command. No. It remains unsent to protect my character, Lincoln states. I wrote it to release the steam, not to deliver the fire. If I send it, I betray my commitment to forbearance. I become what I despise in my opponents, a man driven by personal resentment. He looks at the letter, its harsh text visible on the page. The military failure cost us victory. The political failure of sending this letter would cost us moral authority. General George Meade pulled a heavy mud-caked boot from his foot and dropped it onto the dirt floor of the tent. The sound was dull and heavy. The reports are confirmed, Warren. Lee is across, Meade states, rubbing his face. The physical relief of the battle's end was a sharp contrast to his exhaustion. General Gouverneur Warren, his chief engineer, stands by a lantern. The last of their artillery was ferried over an hour before dawn, General. The Potomac rose another foot overnight. The river is a brown flood. Meade asks us, did we lose any men to their rear guard during the river crossing? Minimal contact, sir. They had their positions protected. Our men are too depleted for a sustained attack on a prepared riverbank position. They barely have the strength to stand guard. Warren confirms. Meade sits heavily on a campaign stool. They fought like demons for 3 days. They held the field. That is the essential accomplishment. The essential accomplishment is securing the survival of the Army of the Potomac, General. The men cannot march. They need shoes, ammunition, and 24 hours of uninterrupted rest. Warren insists, if we had attempted to cross that river immediately exhausted, we would have been annihilated on the Virginia side. Meade takes a slow breath. The relief is immense. We stopped the invasion. I saved the North from the enemy. An aide steps into the tent holding a damp dispatch. General Meade, sir. A dispatch from General Sedgwick. He estimates 2/3 of his corps requires immediate resupply. One division is reporting over 30% of their rifles are rendered useless by the constant rain and fighting. Meade nods, accepting the factual weight of the report. See to Sedgwick first, Warren. We cannot pursue an enemy into their territory with defective weapons. Warren places his hand on the table. Sir, Washington will demand pursuit. They will not understand the physical state of this army. Meade states firmly, they understand the loss of the army even less. I refuse to exchange the security of a decisive victory for the gamble of a bloody, desperate pursuit. We fought a near-perfect defensive battle. The political pressure will be immediate, sir, Warren warns. The Capitol wanted the end of the war, not just the end of the invasion. They wanted the end of Lee's army, Warren, and so did I, Meade replies. But I cannot chase ghosts into a rising river and fortified crossings with men who are collapsing from fatigue. He looks at the dispatch detailing the damaged rifles. The enemy's escape cost the nation time. The destruction of this army would cost the nation itself. I made the only responsible military decision. Meade rises slowly. We must repair. We must resupply. I have saved the army and I have saved the cause. Now, we must prepare to fight again on our terms, not on the enemy's desperate retreat. He gives a final order. Send a cable to the quartermaster. Priority requests for shoes and ammunition. We will move south only when we are capable of moving correctly. Washington is safe. The army is safe. The campaign is a success. He expects gratitude for the immense victory. John Hay, walking toward the desk to clear the overnight telegraphs, sees the unsent letter lying flat. He stops. He recognizes the pressure of the handwriting. He leans closer, reading the underlined passages. He quickly puts the letter down. He turns and walks to where Abraham Lincoln stands by the wall map of the Eastern Theater. Mr. President, the letter to General Meade, Hay states, his voice low and firm. Lincoln turns, his expression unyielding. It states the facts, John. The general failed to follow up on the greatest victory of the war. That failure must be registered. It registers more than failure, sir. It registers fury, Hay counters. Now, you call the general's action a betrayal of the Republic's hope. That language is a weapon that will destroy his remaining authority. Lincoln moves toward the desk. His authority is already compromised by his hesitation. He allowed the escape of the entire enemy army. What authority remains? Hay follows him. The authority needed to command the army in the next engagement, sir. If you send this, every general and corps commander will know that Meade operates under a presidential sentence of condemnation. They must understand the price of caution, Lincoln insists. He touches the edge of the letter. If I do not mark the failure, I encourage further timidity. Hay steps between Lincoln and the letter. You will gain nothing. Lee is across the Potomac. This letter cannot cross the river and capture him. It can demand competence in the future, Lincoln says, his voice flat. It demands more than competence, sir. It demands perfection under impossible circumstances, Hay argues. The general just won a decisive defensive victory. If this letter arrives, every general in the field will read it as a sign that success is meaningless if a greater chance is missed. Hay speaks directly, holding Lincoln's gaze. They will be paralyzed by the fear of your judgment. They will hesitate to act at all, dreading the angry letter that follows a near victory. Their fear should be of the enemy, John, not of their president, Lincoln replies. Your pen holds too much power, sir, Hay states. This letter does not fix the strategy. It only breaks the man. Meade is the commander we have. He cannot lead if he believes he is already disgraced in the eyes of his superior. Lincoln moves past Hay and picks up the letter. He reads the key final underlined line about the Republic demanding an explanation. The anger is just. The delivery is catastrophic. Lincoln asks, "You suggest I allow this failure to pass without consequence? I must simply tolerate this strategic error? I suggest you punish the military error with military means, if a replacement is necessary. But do not punish it with the personal destruction contained on this page," Hay urges. "If you send this, you do not gain a better general. You only gain a paralyzed one." Lincoln stands motionless, the letter held loosely in his hand. He acknowledges the political cost of the action. The nation cannot afford a general whose eyes are fixed on the White House. "Anticipating my censure instead of fixed on the enemy," Lincoln states quietly. Hay nods. "You must preserve the general's belief that he retains your full, if disappointed, trust. The command structure depends on that fiction." Lincoln looks at the harsh ink-stained paper. He understands the profound difference between expressing justifiable rage and maintaining functional authority. Abraham Lincoln holds the unsent letter in his hands. The parchment is heavy with condemnation. John Hay watches, waiting for the final action. Lincoln speaks, his voice tired. "The letter is an expression of my highest hope and my deepest frustration. To send it is to validate the rage that wrote it." Hay, "The war requires dispassionate action, sir. The general's failure was in being too dispassionate. Your response must be purely political." Lincoln walks back to his desk and sits. He places the letter on the wooden surface. "If I sign this, it becomes an official document. It goes into the records. Even if Meade is replaced, this stain remains on his honor and on the history of this victory," Lincoln states. "I wrote this to punish the consequences of his caution. If I send it, the consequence will be the destruction of his spirit, not the capture of Lee." He picks up his pen. He signs his name A. Lincoln at the bottom of the letter, completing the document. The sharp sound of the pen scratching the signature is the only noise. Hay steps closer, expecting the final command. "Shall I have this transmitted to the War Department for immediate dispatch to General Meade's headquarters?" Lincoln places the pen down. He looks at his signature on the angry letter. "No, John," Lincoln says, "you will not." He picks up the signed letter. He folds it deliberately, once, twice. He then walks to a small wooden chest he keeps near his fireplace. He opens the chest, places the letter inside, and closes the lid firmly. He locks the chest, putting the small key into his waistcoat pocket. "Hey, it is signed, sir. It is official condemnation." "Why lock it away?" Lincoln looks at the closed chest. "I wrote this to release my anger, John, not to deliver it." He walks back to the desk, pushing the map of Virginia slightly askew. "The failure at the Potomac must be addressed, yes, but not by destroying the messenger. Meade is flawed, but he is the man who secured Gettysburg. I must use the general I have, not the perfect general I wished for." Hay, "The general will never know how close he came to public disgrace. He will never know the price of his inaction." Lincoln sits down, resting his elbows on the desk. "That is the precise point, John. His ignorance is our political protection. If he knew I signed this, he would believe his next failure means my immediate personal wrath." "You are choosing forbearance over political necessity," Hay observes. "No, John, I am choosing strategy over emotion," Lincoln insists. "This signed letter remains here, a private record of my personal frustration. It will not demoralize the troops. It will not paralyze the command." He leans forward, his focus returning to the immediate present. "Our work now is to resupply that army and press for the next encounter. The time spent punishing Meade is time stolen from prosecuting the war." Abraham Lincoln leaned back in his chair, his eyes fixed on the small wooden chest where the signed letter to General Meade was locked away. John Hay stood opposite the desk. Hay asks, "The general is flawed, sir, yet you choose to absorb his failure publicly. What principle justifies protecting a man who missed the opportunity to end the war?" Lincoln rests his hands on his desk. "The principle is that I cannot correct his judgment by destroying his moral standing." He continues, "Meade performed his duty to the best of his ability at that moment. He erred on the side of caution, which is a flaw of temperament. It is not an act of treason or cowardice." Hay insists, "But your letter outlines the truth. His inaction prolongs the conflict. By shielding him from that truth, you prevent him from learning the necessary boldness." "I am not saving Meade, John," Lincoln states, his voice carrying the weight of the office. "I am saving myself from becoming cruel. My role is to prosecute the war, not to engage in personal vengeance against a subordinate." He explains the logic. "The power of the presidency is immense. Every word I write, every censure I issue, carries the weight of the entire Union. If I deploy that power to relieve my own frustration, I abuse the authority given to me." Hay nods slowly. "So the letter's purpose was solely for your own release?" "Exactly. It was a pressure valve," Lincoln confirms. "The moment I signed it, I realized its function had ended. To send it transforms it from a private release into a public catastrophe." He looks at the chest again. "The goal is to win the war, not to find the perfect man. If I send that letter, Meade will resign immediately. His men, who revere him for the victory at Gettysburg, will become demoralized. I create a political and military crisis to satisfy a personal grievance." Hay presses, "The point, you tolerate mediocrity to maintain stability." Lincoln corrects him sharply. "I tolerate human imperfection to maintain the unity of command. Meade won the greatest battle of the war. I will not dismiss him 3 days later for failing to win the next one that same afternoon." "What of history, sir? If this letter is ever found, it proves your true opinion of his ability," Hay asks. "If history finds it, John, history will also find the record of the president who chose not to use it," Lincoln replies. "The unused power is often the most important record of a man's character." He picks up a fresh telegraph report detailing the logistics of resupplying the troops. "The war's fought on the balance of probabilities, John. I must maintain the largest possible chance of success. Sending that letter guarantees a net loss of morale and command stability. Restraint ensures a net gain." He concludes, "The failure belongs to the past and I have buried it. Our focus is the future. I am not judged by the anger I feel, but by the actions I choose to withhold." The war continued for 20 months. General George Meade remained in command of the Army of the Potomac, though his role shifted under the strategic direction of General Grant. Meade never achieved the bold victory Abraham Lincoln craved. The telegraph lines remained open between Meade's headquarters and the War Department. No further severe censures arrived from the White House. Meade received standard operational orders and logistical updates. He continued to lead the Army, unaware of the judgment that had been written and signed against him. John Hay stood in the office as Lincoln prepared for a necessary public address. Hay speaks, "Meade has executed the last 3 months of movements with caution, Mr. President. He has avoided error, but he has also avoided risk. Did the restraint in sending that letter truly pay the strategic dividend you hoped for?" Lincoln closes his speech notes. "The dividend was not strategic, John. It was political. The war is won by the Army that maintains its coherence. I did not disrupt that coherence. I did not break the man in charge. Hey, Meade fought with effectiveness until the end, but he was never the killer general you needed." Lincoln walks to the small wooden chest near the fireplace. He touches the smooth wood. "The letter remains here. It is proof that I was angry, yes, but it is also proof that I retained the power to manage my anger. That is the highest act of command. The war ended. The victory was secured. Lincoln did not replace Meade before the final surrender at Appomattox. Decades passed. Both Lincoln and Meade were gone. The wooden chest remained in the family archives. After Lincoln's death, his papers were carefully preserved. A historian reviewing the collection found the small chest. The key, preserved with Lincoln's personal items, opened the lock. Inside lay the single, folded, signed letter. The handwriting was severe. The condemnation of General Meade was absolute. The date was shortly after the Battle of Gettysburg. The historian unfolded the parchment. He read the final harsh demand that the general explain his delay. He saw the signature, A. Lincoln. The historian recorded the finding. He confirmed the letter was never transmitted through any military or postal channel. Meade never received it. No one in the War Department saw it. The letter remained a testament not to the failure of the general, but to the restraint of the president. Lincoln chose silence over destruction. Meade died believing he retained the full respect of his commander-in-chief. He never knew that his career, reputation, and legacy had rested upon a piece of paper locked away in a small wooden box.